Israel's military actions in Gaza, stating that their forces have killed thousands of Hamas members. Azar emphasised that civilian casualties are a tragic result of Hamas using civilians as human shields, launching rockets from populated areas and obstructing aid deliveries. He also highlighted Israel's efforts to allow millions of tons of food into Gaza, accusing Hamas of diverting supplies and worsening the humanitarian crisis. This came as Indian political leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra had sharply criticised Israel, accusing it of committing genocide and causing the deaths of over 60,000 Palestinians, including thousands of children. She condemned the Indian government's silence amid what she calls a devastating humanitarian crisis, calling inaction a crime. While joining us to discuss these comments will be Patakrit Pine, but while we wait for him to connect, of course, let's provide some context on this situation. An expanded military operation from Israel was announced by Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that Gaza City would be taken control of, around 70 to 75% of Gaza already under the control of IDF forces. And of course, now this further announcement of escalation of military activity has seen condemnation from world leaders and global political figures. We are now joined by Patakrit Pine, a strategic and international affairs expert who's joining us live from New Delhi. Patakrit, let's have a look at this defence of Benjamin Netanyahu's offensive, which we know from his point of view is going to be looking to control the whole of Gaza. Officials in Israel saying this is necessary, blaming Hamas for the humanitarian crisis and accusing Hamas of living within communities, using these communities and civilians as human shields. Is this, in your opinion, a truthful response, or is this again both sides disagreeing and saying contrary things?
Well, if you look at the way Hamas operates, there is quite a bit of merit in the fact that Hamas does operate from civilian areas. They use civilian buildings for their headquarters, for creating their ammunition depot, for putting their intelligence divisions there. They launch missiles from the hotbed of civilian enclaves, so that even if there is a retaliation, it leads to collateral damages, casualty of civilians, and then the propaganda game of how their adversary, which is the Israeli Defense Force in this case, is responsible for the killing of the ordinary Palestinians. This has been going on for a long time, and we have seen how this template of using civilian enclaves for launching operations against the adversary, we have seen how it has been used even by Pakistan armed forces during Operation Sindoor, where India was at conflict with them. We have seen how they were using missiles from civilian areas. So there is absolutely no denial of the fact that Hamas operates this way. They have a stranglehold. The entire governance of Gaza was handed over to Hamas in 2007. From 2007 to 2025, they could have done a lot in terms of creating a model state out of Gaza. Unfortunately, it did not happen that way. There have been series of terror attacks, and then the October attack of 2023 happened. Whether what Israel does is right or wrong, well, that is subject to debates. But if they don't take it to a logical conclusion, then what invariably would happen is this, that the next attack by Hamas would just be around the corner. So it's a vicious cycle of conflict going on, where Israel, being a very small country with a very limited population, is looking at what is best for them. Yes, it does lead to casualties. It does lead to loss of lives. But I think they're looking for controlling Gaza all over again, as was the case before 2007. Whether it would lead to peace, well, that we have to wait and watch.
Patakrit, let's now look at some of the international condemnation of what's been happening. Of course, these comments from Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, who has obviously spoken out about inaction from the Indian government, but also using strong terms which Israel has continued to deny throughout this conflict, including the use of the word genocide, and say that Israel is directly causing the deaths of over 60,000 Palestinian civilians and people. Do you think that these comments will see any action from the Indian government in terms of potential condemnation? And let's look wider as well. There's a two-part to this question. Do you think we're going to see a shift more broadly from countries that haven't spoken out yet about what is going on in the Gaza Strip?
Well, first and foremost, India has nothing to do with this. India has always spoken in favor of peace. India has advocated the two-nation theory, and there is nothing more that India can do beyond this. There are conflicts going on in many parts of the world, including in India's neighborhood, including India's challenges that we face from Pakistan. So I think these kind of statements will not have an impact so far as India's foreign policy is concerned. Israel is a strategic partner of India, and India is doing what is necessary to be done in the greater interest of India and in the greater interest of fight against terrorism. At the same time, India has always advocated for the people of Palestine. There has been no shift in that policy. On the other hand, it is important to note that some of the politicians do speak about Palestinians, but I find there is an absence when it comes to, there is a void when it comes to speaking on atrocities happening in other parts of the world. I would love to see some of these politicians making comments on the atrocities and genocidal killings that do happen in Bangladesh against the Hindu minorities. I would love to see some of them making strong statements against the genocidal killings of Hindus and Sikhs that happen in Pakistan. So some of these politicians, including the one that you mentioned, it appears that there is a standard template on which they keep on writing or tweeting these things. But the way they speak for Palestine, I have never seen them speaking on behalf of the Hindu minorities of Bangladesh or Pakistan. Secondly, right now, there is a conflict going on in Syria as well, where the Sunni radical Islamist organizations are, massacring the Jews. Why is there no statement on that? Why is
Patakrit, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you ever so much for providing that insight. Of course, an extremely